Good morning. I am taking a few weeks off of doing the wine thing, at home that is. I still get here and have to try wine, right? It's my job. I have to do that on your behalf. Always tasting, always identifying goodness for you. So I'm still doing it and we're still talking about it. Welcome to another Wine Steward video. Got here at 5:45 this morning in order to walk around the store and try to figure out a wine bar theme or two for the wine bar menu that is now printed, ready to go. As soon as you get here, we're going to hand you the menu. And if you'd like, you can start with this. I'm going to talk about this in a few minutes. Almost matches my shirt. Pretty wine. Very nice. It's a good way to start the day with a Brut Rosé, not from Champagne. We're also not paying champagne prices. Oh wait, I said I was going to talk about this later. Kind of hard not to talk about this delicious wine. Let's just stick that right there. I can't, actually. I want you to see this and that behind me, all right? Not very easy to see. I'm not great with the visual aids. I know fancier videos will have these slides show up all of a sudden in front of me, but you want to see me, right? So anyway, here's these terrible props, but point is, where are we going to go right now? We're going to talk about a email that I sent to you, to all who get our emails on Tuesday. I think I published an email later in the afternoon, and it had two main topics. One topic was an event we have coming up. I will elaborate on that in a second. But first of all, I wrote kind of long-windedly about 3 different French wines that are actually up a notch in price, very special, wonderful wines that I've smelled and tasted and savored and fully endorse. And on top of that, they're super rare. Rarity doth not a great wine make, I am fond of saying. Just because something was made in the dozens or hundreds of cases does not make it better than something that was made in the thousands of cases. Rarity, of course, is a novelty and a thrill for we, the wine lover, who can say to our friends, look, you can't have any. I got this. I'm going to share it with you. So be nice about it. But the point is, we only got 2 cases each of these three wonderful French wines. I said got, but what I mean are getting. In other words, they're showing up today or tomorrow. And the one I want to talk about today, basically I want you to go back to that email, or you don't have to. I'm going to resend it. Not everybody reads these emails on Tuesdays from us because they anticipate seeing it later in the week. So good material there. I'm going to clean up my typos and resend it. So you'll have another chance of knowing about these wines. I'm only elaborating about one of them now per this map and that place on the wall back there. That kind of fuzzy photograph I will talk about now with respect to a particular place called Pouilly-Fuisse. Pouilly-Fuisse is in the Macon region. Where is the Macon? Macon is the southern part of another region called Burgundy. So you've got this very hallowed wine place in France called Burgundy, or Bourgogne, if you want to say it more accurately. And within it are neighborhoods, or really, before neighborhoods, you could say counties. There are different, they're not really counties, but they're areas within this long, narrow area called Burgundy. Areas within areas. The southernmost area is the Macon. Do we see that name somewhere? Well, they call it Mâconnais. More appropriately, that's the Mâconnais, or Macon for short. And within this southern part of Burgundy, you have more places, sub places, like Viray-Clessay and Saint-Varin. And all of this, however, a bottle with wine that is grown anywhere here can be called Macon. And then maybe you're spending $18, $20 for that wine. At about $22 happens the Macon Village level. This is kind of like Côte d'Aron and Côte d'Aron Village. You know, it's kind of a pyramid of quality thing. So all of this, anything grown here, going into a bottle can be called Macon, as long as it's Chardonnay. And then you can, within these smaller areas, have Macon Village. They cost a little bit more. They're theoretically a little bit better. Then there's the better places called Saint-Varin, already mentioned, and Viray-Clessay, which Steve used to call very classy, just to be silly. And then the hallowed area called Pouilly-Fuisse, right there, Pouilly-Fuisse. Just a little area. Where is that area within the Macon? We were standing, 4 years ago now, as part of that river cruise. Several of us were standing right here, looking from Saint-Varin out to these 2 outcroppings of rock. One is called, as I've identified here, Solutré. And that one's called Vergisson. The wine I want to tell you about really quickly comes from right here. Everything way over there in this little area, the area delineated by those two rocky outcroppings, is Pouilly-Fuisse. What has not happened until the 2020 vintage, after much, much hard work and probably a lot of political maneuverings and certainly a lot of arguments and indignation, is the classification of certain vineyards within Pouilly-Fuisse that can now be finally, at long last, called Premier Cru. Yes, Premier Cru and Grand Cru, those are special vineyards up until now, up in the Côte de Beaune area and up in Chablis, northern Burgundy. But now the Macon gets theirs. So Pouilly-Fuisse now has particular plots that are sanctified. They are now Premier Cru. 2020 Premier Cru Thierry Durand. It's not made in the dozens, but I think it's only made in the very, very low hundreds of cases, maybe just like 4 or 5 barrels of this stuff. From Vergisson is the name of the plot, and it is gorgeous. I want you to read up on this. I will elaborate there and not here. I just want you to know how important this wine is. It's the very first Premier Cru Pouilly-Fuisse we have ever carried. I endorse it. Paul said, we can sell you 2. I went back to him and said, can you sell us 3? Based on Tuesday's email, we went over the 2 case amount. And so I said, I went begging. I said, can you please sell us 3? And he said, sure. I have a feeling if, based on the excitement that will be generated by this video and the resending of that email, we get to 4 cases, I think he will take care of us and therefore you. Ask about it after reading about it, okay? You got to email me. This is not going to appear on the website with a wine coming in such small supply. It's not worth putting it on the website. You got to talk to me personally with an email after reading about it. Read your email today, okay? That's enough for Macon. And the other topic in that email, how about that? I mentioned something else coming up. We have an event next Wednesday that's going to be very, very cool. A dude named Francesco Riviere, I hope I used the right accentuation there, will be flying up from LA for the second time recently because he was here about a month ago. I believe it was May. I don't see it on the calendar, but it was mid-May when he visited and showed us several fantastic Tuscan reds from San Felice Winery, Tuscany, Italy. Most of them were based on Sangiovese. Some were 100% Sangiovese. Some were so-called Super Tuscans. Some of it was Gran Selezione Chianti Classico. Have you ever heard of that? That's better than Reserva. That's a higher level up. Some was Reserva. Some was Brunello di Montalcino. And so on. These wines were lovely, and they were consistently lovely, which meant I thought there should be an event. I thought you should taste a lineup of these wines from San Felice. That's what we're going to do. Francesco's coming back up next Wednesday. We've already filled this thing up maybe halfway. There are seats remaining. Anybody who loves Italian wine, who really wants to go to Tuscany without buying an expensive plane ticket, should sign up for next Wednesday's event. I will be doing my bread, but you really ought to order the cheese and meat platter to go along because it is going to be specially designed with Italian goodies to go along with these beautiful reds from San Felice. We have a feeling, just because we want something bubbly in there too, we're going to have a fantastic real-life champagne as well. But we'll see. We're building the list right now. I think it's pretty much determined now, but I can promise you that we're going to be referencing the wonderful 2015 and 16 vintages of Tuscany, which are thought by the critics and by ourselves as well to be among the best vintages ever for that area. If you love Italian wine, if you love great Sangiovese, you really ought to come to this event. So be looking for that email or dig into your mailbox and find Tuesdays and RSVP right away because we can only seat, 24 of you. All right? It's wine bar time. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about what I had in my glass. Where is it? I still have some. Oh boy, that's nice. Let's put a bottle up in front of you. Finally, come on, we need some props. All right, so this is Domaine de la Palais. It is, in fact, our sparkling wine of the week on the wine bar menu as of right now. Domaine de la Palais is in the Loire Valley, in the central Loire, in the village of Saumur. Saumur. Kind of, as soon as you have this, you'll say, oh, I want some more Saumur. And we'll know what you mean. This is 100% Cabernet Franc. It's done kind of like what you would call méthode traditionnelle, not méthode champenoise, in that it only saw one fermentation. What they did is they started a fermentation in big tanks, and It was the sugar was converting over to alcohol, and right before all the sugar was gone, they turned the temperature on those tanks way, way, way down. So the fermentation was not killed, but arrested. And then they moved the wine to bottles, individual bottles, and then warmed them up slightly and let the fermentation resume. And so the rest of the fermentation happened in individual bottles, creating more sparkling or CO2. And so you had trapped CO2. What you also had was gunk, however. So there was a little riddling involved to get all the gunk down. I'm not going to turn this upside down. I've already made a mess today with this bottle. Took a little shower. They got all the gunk to the bottom, did what's called a disgorgement, got the gunk out, put a little more wine in, and sealed it up with a nice cork. And what you have here is fantastic, especially for the money. It's a nicely priced Brut Rosé, really smart stuff. I'm saying it now, I'm declaring a new personal preference. This is my favorite under $25 sparkling wine that we have right now, bar none. Anything down there, 25 and less, this has more complexity, more generosity. The color's gorgeous. Really, really cool. 100% Cabernet Franc from Saumur in the Loire Valley. All right, so get in on that. Now let's tell you about the white flight. We always provide a white flight. I had a devil of a time determining the sequence this time because these wines kind of argued with each other. These four white wines all wanted to they didn't want to share the stage. They really wanted to have their own say, and whatever came afterwards in the sequence I was planning on was kind of like screwed up by what had come before. I think I've got it right now, but let's practice. Let's see if this works. This is our old friend from Emilio Moro in Ribera del Duero, Spain. Povorete Godeo. Well, I said the producer is there, and that's where they're based, but they also have a winery facility farther out west now in the northwest of Spain in a region called Bierzo, I should roll my R, where Godeo thrives. This is the land of Godeo. Godeo is the name of the grape. I know we've probably heard of Albarino and perhaps Verdejo, but this is Godeo. Godeo is a fantastic white of which you just don't see as much, and so it's not as famous, but I think it's actually more complex, or can be, than Albarino. It's a little richer. It's a little like Chenin Blanc meets Pinot Gris, maybe. But it really is its own thing. It's cool stuff. This is the entry-level wine from Emilio Moro, Godeo, Povorete. They make 3 levels of it, and it's back. Okay, now let's see if this works. Is this wine going to mess up the next wine? That's the big question. And choosing the sequence of these whites. Let us try this. Let's go to Washington State. Been there before, haven't we? But this is a newcomer. We did show it at the Washington State wine event, but we haven't shown it to you, the wine bar patron. So let's try this L'Ecole number 41. That's a reference to a schoolhouse, an old schoolhouse where the winery resides. L'Ecole means school. School number 41. It's a very, very old Washington State schoolhouse in the Yakima Valley area. Chenin Blanc smells fine after the Godeo. Aromatically, this works. It's not sweet Chenin. It's totally bone dry, and I think it works after the Godeo. It is its own thing. That's the problem. Sometimes the wine that came before just totally messes up the palate for the next. But I believe this has it's a discreet Chenin Blanc, but it has its own voice. So far, so good on this sequence. Now, what I would normally do if I had foreign wine and domestic wine, I would put the foreign wine first, domestic later. But now we're going to go back to Europe. Let's go back to France, in fact, for a Petit Chablis. Chablis, as noted earlier, is way far north of where this picture was taken, but still within the region of Burgundy. So Chablis is the northernmost part of Burgundy, and Macon, where the Pouilly-Fuisse section is in the southernmost part. But we're going to go to the north. What happens in the north? It's colder, right? Not as much heat. The sunshine is valued. The slopes that face south and west are the most important for making the bigger, more richer wines. And then you have Petit Chablis in the outlying areas, which is not as expensive. And I love the stuff because I can afford to drink it on a weeknight. And it's bright and minerally. It is 100% Chardonnay, but some people who only drink the really rich big oak bomb, butter bombs here from the California state are not going to necessarily identify this right off the bat as Chardonnay. But once we tell them and they think about it, and we ask them to regard the fact that this is where limestone happens, you should feel that limestone. There should be a minerally texture to the wine. Some people out there are saying and writing articles saying that the mineral in the soil of vineyards does not affect flavor. Well, maybe that's true, but I think it affects feel. And I think feel and flavor are often two different things happening in your mouth. So anyway, that's my counter. Does this work after the Chenin Blanc? Yes. More minerally, Petit Chablis is having its say. Good. So far, so good. 3 out of 4 ain't bad. Let's see if we get 4 out of 4. Wine number 4 in the white wine flight this weekend, ladies and gentlemen, will take us to Bordeaux. I know we're doing a lot of France this time, but you know, we are the wine steward. This is going to be 60%. Did I get that right? I'm cheating again. Come on, they put it on here somewhere. Yeah, 60. No, sorry, 50% Sauvignon Blanc. In Bordeaux, like Burgundy and Bordeaux are what? France's most famous wine places. You know, we've all heard of them and maybe we've been drinking them all along. But white Bordeaux isn't as well known. I can tell you that white Bordeaux is almost always comprised of Sauvignon Blanc and Semillon. And sometimes a little bit of a grape called Muscadel plays in there. This time a third grape is not Muscadel, it's Sauvignon Gris. So it's 50% Sauvignon Blanc, 40% Semillon, and 10% Sauvignon Gris. A wine like this from Graves, which is southern Bordeaux, a very famous region where they grow the great Château de Chem, the sweet wines. This is dry, but these guys make a sweetie as well. These wines are almost always put into an oak barrel, and in this case it's not. However, it has this texture. Okay, this happens at the end, this should, because this is a noisy wine in the nose. It's got a noisy nose. The texture is a little richer in a good Grave Blanc, and the presumption is that it saw oak barrels. This one does not. It's beautiful. It went to the World Class Wine Club, a rare white submission to that club, and lo and behold, the white wine flight works. Thank you for helping me figure that out. Now, what are we doing by the glass? Because sometimes we have a couple of entries on the menu, the wine bar menu, that are not part of flights. That's going to happen 2 times this time. Let me put this very pretty thing in front of you first. This just got here yesterday. I tasted it with Paul Bullard, our Bone Wine Imports rep, just a week ago, and I said, gosh, we got to have that. Our very first ever rosé from Beaujolais. Beaujolais, where's that? It's just south of here. So I told you about Macon. Beaujolais is the next region down. We don't really call it Burgundy anymore. We used to, but Beaujolais doesn't have to be called Burgundy. It's really its own thing for 2 reasons, because it promotes another grape, and not Pinot Noir necessarily, even though they grow a little there. Where they grow a lot of there is Gamay. Gamay is the grape of Beaujolais. And then what is the other difference? They have limestone, but they have far more granite there. So different soil type, different grape, and frankly, a different governing or political, what do they call them there, department. So, you know, there's at least 3 reasons to call Beaujolais. It is its own region nowadays, even though we used to group it in with Burgundy. Hell, let's just shut up and try the wine, all right? Look at how pale it is. Beautiful pale pink. It looks more pink with my shirt in the background, but let's put my red fit. No, let's get, yeah, there. That's a good background. It's gorgeous. Oh my God. It just got here, 2021 vintage. It's brilliant. It's cheerful. It's careless. It flirts. It just, That is lovely. I'm glad I'm only drinking not at home, or not drinking at home. I'm not drinking. I taste wine. I never drink. Okay, let's get that straight. All right. So I told you there were 2 wines that are offered by the glass this weekend, and this is the other one. Our good friend Adam Webb was just down here for reasons we will divulge in the next video. We have fantastic news to relate to you. But in the meantime, let's just say that Adam was in the house. Adam Webb is a very good friend and a fantastic winemaker of small production stuff. He dabbles, he does a lot of things. He loves Rhone varieties, but he also gets out of that a little bit and makes a beautiful Chardonnay that's coming. and a Pinot Noir that we tasted and said, damn, we got to get this on the shelf right away. Not just because we really like it, but because we need some better, kind of slightly higher end Pinot Noir down there. We keep getting bought out. You guys love your Pinot these days. This is gorgeous. It's just been bottled and released. It is from the Anderson Valley, the deep end of the Anderson Valley, which means it's farther down the Navarro River toward the Mendocino coast. That's the deep end of the Anderson Valley. Did you know that? In fact, he uses that nickname there. The Cochon Deep End Anderson Valley Pinot Noir from the Clow Ridge Vineyard. It's ripe, it's got beautiful fruit, but it's also got a dusty tannic resistance, and it's a complete Pinot Noir for the intellect and for the hedonist. How about that? The intellectual and the hedonist. Let's get this phrase right. I'm still learning to sell this particular wine to you, but it's beautiful Pinot Noir offered by the glass. A great wine like this should be enjoyed by the entire glass. All good wines should be enjoyed by the entire glass. Even when you do one of our flights, come back to your favorite. Come back to the one that made you the most curious. Have a whole glass of it to fully know it. You've already heard that from me. Now, you've also heard from us recently with respect to red flights that were more delicate, or that we chill, or we drink them out of a big fat bowl of a glass, like the New World Pinot Noir glass. And most of these wines have been not necessarily big. They haven't had loud voices. They've been more delicate for a reason, because it's hot outside and we are more in the mood for lighter reds right now. But doggone it, sometimes you want a big red. Sometimes you think the wine steward has totally gone over to the wimpy style, and I want to reassure you that we haven't, by giving you 5 loudmouth red wines. Actually, on the menu, I called them 5 outside voice wines. Remember, mom or your teacher or the librarian saying to you, please, inside voices, inside voice, inside. No, these are outside voice wines. In other words, they have they're louder. They're alcoholically maybe slightly higher, but the fruit is bigger, or whatever they're saying, whether it's fruit or other components, they are all louder, higher volume. So we're going to go first to an old favorite of ours. This is a Côte Village from Mas de Boilazon. I don't really have to try it, but I want to. I've loved this wine so many times, but this is just kind of like coming back to an old friend real quick. This is, of course, the predictable Grenache, Syrah, and Mourvedre, but what's kind of nice is the grape that we keep trying to tell you more about, Carignan, happens in it as well. So it's a GSMC. How about that? Nice and ripe. It's the 2019 vintage, which means it will automatically be an outside voice wine, a loudmouth. Wine number 2. I don't think there's anything such as discreet wine from Chile. Here is a blend of different Bordeaux varieties, plus I think it's actually got 5 or 6. It's Cabernet, Cab Franc, Malbec, Carmenere, of course, it's Chile. Merlot and Petit Verdot happen in this Colchagua Valley wine from Primero. It's called Primero. It's by a producer called Axel. And there's Chile. We know Chile when we smell it, don't we? Kind of like, yeah, there's fruit, but there's a lot of savory as well. It's kind of like an Alexander Valley Cabernet with just a little more of an ivy smell to it, perhaps. A lot like an Alexander Valley Cab, aged for a while. And just like I said, a little more, maybe roasted red pepper, fresh cut ivy, and in the palate, not just those flavors, but also, once again, there is feel on the palate. There is structure. What is structure? Structure is kind of like my catch-all phrase. I didn't make it up. We use it a lot in wine speak. Structure refers to tannins and acidity, 2 different ways that the palate feels resistance. Like if a wine just has smoothness and softness and has no structure, it is flaccid. It is as flaccid as a limp elephant's trunk. What do you think I was? Well, at any rate, this is not flaccid. This has structure. Acidity and tannins both occur in this wine to excite the mouth, to make you hungry, and those features are great to keep you thirsty for more, hungry for food. It's a fantastic food wine with great structure. How about that? Who wants flaccidity after all? We want rigidity, right? Good rigidity in that wine. Let's have some more rigidity here with a wine from Ribera del Duero. We've put this before you before. This one I ran through a Venturi just to see how it might react to a super aeration, and I'm going to find out now. It is a little closed when you first open it. Sounds weird. When it's no longer closed, it is still kind of closed. At any rate, this is 100% Tempranillo, made in a region called Ribera del Duero, where friends of ours were just visiting, and then they headed off to Rioja. So hello, Jen and Tony and Madison. I hope you're having a good time in Spain. They went to this region, like I said. I don't think they made it to this winery, but they can come back and have a glass of this with us sometime. 100% Tempranillo. Most of the barrels here were oversized barrels, not small, regular-sized barrique, but bigger than that, and they were 2-year-old barrels on top of that. So we're not really looking for a lot of wood here. We're looking for location and grape. The grape Tempranillo. This is classic stuff. Some of this is going to my cellar. I'm going to be aging a lot of this and checking in on a bottle every year for the next, 8 or 9 years, I would say. You got to think of having lamb with it. I say that a lot. I'm talking about Tempranillo from Spain, but it especially applies to this more rigid outside voice Tempranillo. I bet my lips are turning purple. All right. Now, if that's a little too much structure for you, a little too much rigidity, and you want something maybe finally a little more soft and not flaccid, but just a little softer, let's come back to the New World. Let's go to Sonoma County and have the second label of Blue Rock Vineyards called Baby Blue. And this has been on our shelf for many a vintage. This is the latest vintage. It's going to use Cabernet Merlot, Syrah, so that's a little non-Bordeaux intruder. And then a Petit Verdot, Malbec, and Cabernet Franc happen in this beautiful, what I would call almost cocktail style red wine from Blue Rock called Baby Blue. Why do I call it a loudmouth or outside voice wine? Because it's got a lot to say. It's noisy in a softer way. How about that? Let us finish with a beautiful loudmouth from Washington State. This is K Vintners. Even the label itself is pretty darn loud. Charles Smith up there makes several different Syrahs. Probably 8 or 9 Syrahs every year. Crazy about that grape. And of course, Washington State does very well with that grape. The cool thing about Washington State is not the whole area is not necessarily cool. You've got different places for Syrah, some warmer than others. This is from Wahluke Slope. That's one of the hottest subregions of the Columbia Valley in Washington State. And so what we expect from this Syrah is a little more warmth of fruit and less of the peppery thing, the pepper and smoked meat thing that can happen in cooler areas for Syrah. And that in fact is happening. I would like to in fact cool this down a little bit because the fruit is like audacious right now, but it's beautiful. Super smooth, still thoughtful. There's a little of the savory, there's a little bit of the beef as well as fruit. Good stuff, a nice way to end the red flight. I hope to see you at the wine bar anytime from like 5 minutes from now and on. So it'd be nice to have you guys up again. And thank you so much for listening and watching, and do consider the great Pouilly-Fuisse Premier Cru for the first time ever offered to the wine steward. Just a little bit of it coming in. Read that email and think about coming to that event as well. It's going to be delicious. And have a great weekend. Stay cool.